there was this guy that I've interviewed, and it's coming on the show, and he said that when he had a near-death experience, that he saw that twin flames were true. That was true. That we have actually another part of us that we belong together. We are connected to the soul, and that the soul is not necessarily incarnating with us again and again. And I have sort of put that topic to the side. I was very interested in it a few years ago. I was like, who is my twin flame? Who is my soulmate? But then I was like, yeah, maybe I should just stop looking for my soulmate and see what's coming up, because I can get so attached to that idea. And I feel sometimes we can even stay longer in a relationship that is maybe not serving us anymore, because we feel this intense connection. And a twin flame connection might be very challenging.
Yes.
And what I found is that I didn't want that anymore. I wanted a harmonic
harmonious relationship.
Yeah, and I have that now. So that was a long introduction to my question. Could you share a little bit before we move into channeling about your twin flame experience?
Gosh, yeah. And you are so right that our soulmate relationships are those that are like the peaceful, people that you've been with in the past that you meet and you just feel easy and comfortable with, and a twin flame relationship, usually it's a flame because it flames out, right? You know what I mean? It's like there's some massive, you come together and you combust. And mine is not incarnated right now. My twin flame is not. He's on the other side. And I was not aware of him at all until it came up that I was at a channeling intensive, and I was at this channeling intensive. I was channeling myself, and as I was in this, I was doing trance channeling. I was relating everything I was seeing, and the story started to unfold. That I was living in Portugal. I had a role. At that time, it was like probably 14th century, so a long time ago. I had a role where I was designing ships, but mostly I was involved in planning expeditions. I was planning I had a school of students, and I would teach them. And I was really, really into navigation, like all the new technologies that were coming out around navigation and plotting different, learning about different areas and exploring. And so it was not for conquering, it was for exploring. And I was living in Portugal. And anyways, I ran this school, and I had all this coming, and I had detail after detail, right? I'm living it as if I'm there. I could see everything. And I could see that at the time, I'm running the school, I'm looking out at the students, I can see the room. And I can see that on my left, there's this one young man, and I recognize that I'm deeply drawn to this young man. But I also know in that life, I'm about 40 years old, and I'm a man, and I'm Catholic. I'm very Catholic. I'm very religious, but not in a way that it's just like everybody is. It's a feeling like this is just what is true and what everybody does. It's like there was no freedom of any kind. It was like, this is truth. You know what I mean? So the feelings of rigidity around it were just like solid walls in every direction. But I clearly was in love with this guy. So, and I know I never got married in that life. I never had children, probably because I was very, very gay and it was not allowed. But the concept of the word gay, wasn't even in my language. I just was drawn to this guy. But I was creating all these reasons why we would be thrown together. I got this new tool and I gave it to him to learn. So, because I knew it would throw us together, because he would be working with it. He would meet with me. And then it became really clear one night that he was with me. We were in front of a fire in my area where I work, my room. And he reached over and put his hand on my hand. And I just flipped. I just freaked out. And I left the room. And then I avoided him for 2 weeks. After that, I just did everything I could not to see him. And then one of the captains, the people who was organizing the next expedition, came to me, and he gave me the list of the people who were going to be going. And that guy that I was in love with was going. And I knew, because I always talked about how I wanted to go on these expeditions, but I couldn't because I had to be the one that planned them. But I was always talking about it. And I knew he was going because I wanted to go. He was going for me because it was what I wanted. But I was just relieved because I didn't want him to be around me, because I felt I couldn't control my feelings. So I wanted him gone. So I was glad he was going. And then 2 months later, I hear that the boat he was on sank and he was killed in that moment. And I was just grief stricken beyond anything. Like I just, all of my feelings and the awarenesses and everything just came to me, and I died that life wishing that his death had been mine, like wishing that I could take that death. And that was my karma. So I left that life with the karma of wishing I had drowned. So I came into this life and I wasn't aware of any of this until I was going through healing myself. And my dream showed that I had enormous congestion in my liver. And so went through a couple different healing sessions. I went through I did some acupuncture on it. I did several different sessions. And then finally I was like, I did two one day and then the next day, which was really probably too much because I did 2 days in a row. And I've learned since then not to do that. But I was laying on the healing bed. The acupuncture was going on. I had this sort of crystal grid coming down over me. And then all of a sudden, boom, it was like the floodgates open. And I had vision after vision after vision coming up. And the first thing I saw was myself at age 12 at the beach and I remembered in this life where a wave hit and knocked my feet out from underneath me. And I was carried in the wave and I was just like somersaulting and I couldn't figure out which way was up. And I'd see the up and then I'd be in under again. And I saw that I had the memory come back. And then I had the memory of him, like almost as if I was in his experience, like I was living his experience of drowning. And I felt him being thrown into the water and struggling, like he couldn't, trying to keep his head above water and there's waves and I'm having that. So I'm seeing, I'm feeling, I'm living in this life, the experience that he had. And then I put forward again to this life and I'm brought back to a time when I was an infant, when I was at I was with my mom at the neighbor's house. They had a pool and I fell into the pool and I had the memory came back to me in the vision of myself just sinking, just slowly sinking to the bottom of the pool. And then they flash back to his life and I see as he starts to become exhausted and cold and he loses control of his limbs and he begins to sink into the ocean. And then by the way, and when I drowned as a baby or whatever, the neighbor jumped in and saved me, which was great. But then I'm brought forward again to this life, and I'm brought to in my 20s. I was whitewater rafting, and the raft flipped, and I was thrown to the space behind it's called like a sink, like a I can't remember what they call it now, but it's the area behind a rock in a river, and all the water comes around that rock and then it flows over the rock and it pours down inside the river and creates almost like an underwater waterfall. And I was thrown into that space and I was sucked down by the waterfall and pinned on the bottom of the riverbed. And the force of the suction of that water coming down was so strong, it pulled my wetsuit booties right off my feet, literally just sucked them right off. And I remember being pinned at the bottom of the ocean where I couldn't do anything. I was just there. And time slowed down, and I remember thinking like, this is it, I'm dying. And I remember feeling at that time like there was just nothing I could do. And I have that memory come back as I'm on the healing table, the memory of being held at the bottom of the ocean, and I'm brought forward again to him. And this is his last moments on earth. And I realized that this was my karma that I had wished on myself, that I had wished to take his death. So here I was taking a death by drowning. But then the amazing thing that happened is all of a sudden something shifted in the waves, like in the way the water was coming down. I don't know, something happened. And all of a sudden I was shot back up to the surface. And I came up and the boat was above me. It had flipped and I was underneath the raft and I could feel the bottom of the boat. And I had kind of found my way to the side of the boat. And then I was able to get clear of the boat and get out, and I was okay. I was scared to death, but I was okay, shaking like a leaf, And it comes to find out that in that moment, I was pregnant. I was about 8 weeks pregnant, and I lost the baby. And the thing that is so amazingly heartbreaking and touching and inspiring is to understand that the reason I lost the baby in that moment was because that baby had come in to take the death for me, to take my karma that I had wished on myself. So the baby, I had my ultrasound at 12 weeks and they told me that the baby was dead. I didn't know. And they told me that the baby had died at 8 weeks, exactly at that moment that I had been under the river. And I know that that was the reason for me having that baby to begin with. Was the baby, it was a soul contract between us where the baby had come and had chosen to help me clear the karma I had wished on myself by taking that death, which I had wanted for myself, so that I could go on living and have this life.
To watch the full video, click the link below, and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel.
Resto maliata